Jacksboro, Texas, centrally located in Jack County, can be found at the junction of Highway 281 and 380. First settled in the 1850s, it was originally called Mesquiteville. The name was later changed to Jacksboro in 1858 when the town was designated the county seat. On the southern part of town, you will find Fort Richardson State Historical Park, which was the northernmost of a line of federal forts established in 1867. As you're driving across Texas, make sure you plan to stop in at a local museum, take in one of the many events in town, or have coffee with the chamber. You don't want to miss this gorgeous piece of Texas.
Hey folks, welcome to Drive Across Texas. I am Pat Waters. Today on our Drive Across Texas, we're at Fort Richardson State Historical Site in Jacksboro, Texas. Just up the road from my hometown of Bridgeport. We're with Miss Angelina Sean, and she's the interpreter of the whole facility out here. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good, good. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and letting us kind of tromp in. And man, this facility's amazing.
Beautiful.
So tell the folks out there exactly what you do as the interpreter.
Well, as the interpreter, I give daily tours. I take care of the educational programming. I plan and host events. We just had a big one last weekend. Our Living History happened. We do a couple of 2 or 3 large events and then several small events per year. So I take care of all of that. And all of this beautiful grass you see, I take care of that as well. So
you got a push mower, you mow the whole place?
Not a push mower, but I get it taken care of.
Good.
I wear many hats here at this park, as all of us do, actually. It's a smaller park, but being the size of it that it is, it does require a lot of upkeep, so we've got an awesome staff who take care of the whole park.
So let me ask you a question here. It kind of piqued my curiosity when you was talking about staff. Is this a state-funded park?
It is.
So basically, how many is on staff here?
On staff, we have 9, and then we have park hosts as well who come in and they get their sites paid for, and they help us out around here.
Now, are they on a volunteer basis?
They
just
are.
Basically get their sites paid for?
Yes, sir.
You know, tell me, I mean, it's just phenomenal. I mean, the history. What is your favorite part about the site here?
Well, to be honest, and I know it's going to sound a little partial, but my favorite part of this site is the sport. I love the history here, and I love sharing the history. I get to talk to people from all over the world, and I get to share what Jacksboro has to offer.
Your education on Fort.
Yes,
that's awesome.
I absolutely love it. Now, a little known thing about this area that I do try to bring up is the railroad. And the question is always asked, we have out in the middle of our parade grounds a railroad train trestle. That gives me the opportunity to talk about the railroad that came through about 20 years after the fort closed here. So, I mean, all of the history, I guess that is the bottom line. The history of this place is my absolute favorite thing.
Tell me one of your favorite educational points that you tell the guest. One of your stories.
My favorite story is one that was passed down from me from my predecessor in the hospital, and it's always inevitable. I have someone, while we're standing next to the stairs in the hospital, ask me about what's upstairs. And at that point, I just say, well, it's just rooms, but it had been the morgue before they built the present morgue. And my favorite thing about that is there was one instance where there was a man who had passed away and was taken upstairs to the morgue. Now this was July, August, summertime, really hot summertime. And all of them forgot that he was up there. Now typically they prepped and buried the men within a couple of days, but this man was left for quite a while. And in the summer heat, what happens to someone or something that has died, he began to swell. So they eventually remembered, oh, there's this man upstairs. We've got to go get him down. By the time they realized, his body had swollen and almost to the point of rupture. So at this point, they start bringing him downstairs to get him buried. But I'm not sure what happened exactly, and standing in front of the stairs, they're very steep. But someone either lost their footing, missed a step, but either way, this poor man was dropped. And he bounced down the stairs. By the time he reached the bottom, he had burst.
Oh.
So my favorite thing about this is when I'm talking to the children, it's typically right there where that happened. So I get a lot of jumps and ah! So that's one of my favorite exciting points. And then I tell them the rest of the story, how this floor was replaced, so you're not standing in this man. But I think that's one of my absolute favorite stories.
And we're sitting here on Officers Row, right? This is what this was, and you took us over and showed us the quarters. Tell everybody about that. That's kind of a unique building, and there's not very many of them left.
That's right. That is the commanding officer's house. We call it the officer's quarters because it's the only one we have left. But it is the only remaining building of its type and age left in the United States. So I like to tell people this is the only place you're going to see a building like this. It's very special.
Well, thank you for walking us through it. It's really, really unique.
It is.
And you were telling me that General Sherman was here and actually was invited to sleep in that, and with Mackenzie, right?
He was.
And he did not sleep in it, but he ate a 9-course meal that took 3 hours.
9-course, 3-hour meal.
Wow, that's amazing.
So on the frontier, what did that consist of?
Exactly. Who knows? We got 9 courses out here, especially in those times.
Exactly.
Then you also took us back here to the hospital, which is the largest building on the premises. So it was built in 18.
They started building it in 1867, and it was completed in late 1868, early 1869, with the last ward being completed at that point. And it was, at that time, the largest and one of the largest, most technologically advanced hospitals between Fort Worth and El Paso. So it was a big deal out here on the frontier to have something of that size and with the advancements that they did have.
That's great. I mean, it's actually cool. It's got 2 different sections where the patients would be, and it had what they call an earth
closet.
Earth closet.
And that was the newest technology. In 1868, it was patented. Essentially, I tell people it's kind of like your cat box. But it was a big deal because you didn't have to go outside and find a bush.
Yeah.
You had your own inside bathroom that you could use.
That's great. That's great. Now, you told me a story earlier about 3 Indian chiefs, Santa Ana, Satanta, Big Tree,
and
Satank. Would you share that story with the viewers? I think it's very intriguing.
So these 3 men, Satanta, Big Tree, and Satank, were, of course, chiefs in the Kiowa Nation. And at that point, many of the Indians were on reservations, and the Kiowa were typically pretty docile and laid back, didn't want to make a whole lot of trouble. But at this point in 1871, these men, many of them, were just tired of being pushed around. So these 3 men decided that they wanted to do a raid. And before they left, the medicine man with the tribe cautioned them and told them to wait for the second wagon train. Don't attack the first one, wait for the second one. So as they were directed, they waited past the first one and attacked the second one. The second one being a group of Teamsters. There were 12 of them. And this happened just north of Jacksboro. And in the attack, they killed 7 of the 12 men. The 5 remaining were left there. There was one of those 5 that did run. He made a run for it, and he ran straight here to Fort Richardson because he wanted to report it. Now, at this point, General Sherman was out here. General Sherman had come out, and because he had been getting a lot of concerns about Indian attacks out in this area on the frontier. So his thoughts were it wasn't really occurring. So he decided to come out and check on it, make sure that these stories were correct. So at that point, he was actually here at Fort Richardson. But the attack happened. General Sherman heard firsthand what had happened, and he let Colonel McKenzie know. Colonel McKenzie at that point was the commanding officer here, and let him know, we've got to find these men because we can't have that happening. And in the process of that, General Sherman also found out that the day of the attack, that he had been that first wagon train.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, that upset him, and he was now on a mission to find these men. Now, these men went to Fort Sill, and they had ration day, and they were out there. And, of course, they were out there boasting of their conquer, stating things about how many of the white men they took down, how many they lost, and just bragging. And this word got back to General Sherman. So they went and arrested them there and brought them back here to Jacksboro to face trial. Now, this wasn't a military issue. These Teamsters were civilians. So it was Jack County that was going to be trying them. And en route, Satank, who was the eldest of the 3 men, had made the statement, I will not face trial, and no white man is going to try me. I'm just not going to do it. So en route, in the back of the wagon, he actually covered his head with his blanket and began singing his death chant. At this point, the guards just thought, oh, he's ashamed, he's feeling bad about what he did. But in actuality, he was chewing through the flesh on his hands because he wanted to get out of his shackles. Now, his plan was to attack the guard. So once he had chewed enough flesh away, he did get out of his shackles and threw off his blanket, and he took a knife and attacked that guard. And in that process, he got the gun that guard had, and he jumped off the back of the wagon and took aim on the other 2 guards that were with them. But before he could get a shot off, they shot him down there in the street. So he didn't face that trial.
Didn't face no trial, did he?
So they did get here with Satank and Big Tree to Jacksboro, but because the county or the city, neither one, had their own jail, they were kept here at the guardhouse here at the fort during their trial, and they were found guilty of murder and sentenced to hang. But at this point, there were several groups, and as well as the Kiowa Nation itself, who let them know, no, these men do not need to hang. That's too much trouble for you guys. So it was agreed upon to commute it to life in prison. So these 2 men did serve about just under 2 years at Huntsville Prison. They were eventually released. There are a couple of stories about that, but there were 5 Mexican boys who had been kidnapped by the Kiowa. So in exchange for those 5 boys, they were released from prison. Satanta, of course, and we see stories about him, continued with this lifestyle. He spent a lot of time in Huntsville. Big Tree, on the other hand, married, went back to the tribe, married, had a family, actually became a minister later on.
Wow.
So he changed his life and lived quietly for the rest of his days.
That's great. Folks, I'm telling you, on your drive across Texas, if you come down 281 to Jacksboro, Texas, be sure to pull in here to Fort Richardson. There are millions of stories on the history of Texas in this wonderful facility here. Angelina, thank you so much again for showing us all the different quarters and the buildings. We really appreciate it. You've definitely piqued my curiosity, so I'll probably have to come up here and spend some time with you and get more educated.
Yes, sir.
Y'all remember now, that baby's coming from a Texan. Adios.